When you see movies from in World War II and you see dive bombers and battleships blowing up, they're miniatures and it looks ridiculous. Now they use computers which no longer look like computers, they look like the real deal. And we're asked to concentrate on story now. The technology is caught up with our expectations of being the real deal. Verisimilitude, the fancy words you use that. It thrusts us into another world, particularly in sword and sandal movies like the Lord of the Rings movies and all that. And that's why kids love that. It's like reading a giant comic book. Well, you have to start with Star Wars. And I've gone back and looked at the original Star Wars, and people say, oh, it looks so primitive. To me, it doesn't, because I think the job of a film critic is not to go as a film critic, but to go as close to the average film goer as possible. And I still think that was a technological breakthrough, particularly when they go into hyperspace or superspace, whatever they call it. I think hyperspace. But one of the other ones is another Spielberg film. I said to him, the last time I saw him, I said, it's because of you I haven't been in the ocean since Jaws. And then I said, look, I know there was one scene where you couldn't get the 3 mechanical sharks to work. This was in the pre-computer age. You had one that turned left, one that turned right, and one that went in the center. None of them could work. And you had to shoot that shot. He said, I remember we used the yellow barrels. That was a benefit to the film because it's your imagination. What horrible giant behemoth underneath the water must be there to move those barrels? If you'd had today's computers, you would have shown the shark as, you know, with CGI, whatever, and it wouldn't have been as good. The viewer had to work a little bit and use his or her imagination. And I think that, for me, that was a watershed. That's kind of like the dividing line between the birth of computers in movies and the work of genius that we see today. The other thing is, I can see a movie and really not recommend it, but if I'm not the target audience, and the target audience is usually kids for a lot of those movies, Transformers movies like that, say at least if you happen to see this movie, you can marvel at the special effects. I hope anybody watching this gets the sense that we're in a terrific time when technology is not only increasing, but it's increasing by leaps and bounds, quality-wise. That what was fantastic 5 years ago is routine now, but the people who are behind these things are not complacent and blasé about it. They're always trying new things. I think 10 or 15 years from now, we may see holograms coming out in front of the set. That's not inconceivable now. Look, you can hold up your smartphone and see your friend. That'll be 3D, it might be holograms. All sorts of things are coming. And one discovery leads to the possibility of another one. And someone else will come along with it. That's constantly going on that we don't know about. We're just enjoying the fruits of their labor. And if you look at an old video magazine 10 years ago, the stuff looks antiquated. To start out with the TV, there's a TV that's not a flat screen. What do you do with it? You don't use it to make landfill. Things like that. A flat screen TV now is de rigueur. Everybody has one. Well, that's a constant ongoing process. And I don't think it'll ever overwhelm movies. It'll never be a movie just to see the technical aspects. I rue that day. But luckily, we have good actors and we have good screenwriters and good directors who can match their skills with the technicians to make something 5 or 10 years from now that will astonish us, visually and intellectually, hopefully, or at least entertain us. The Jazz Singer was not an entirely talking picture. It started out kind of with mostly silent, and then he started saying, hey, wait, you ain't heard nothing yet. And that ended the careers of some people like John Gilbert and silent stars who would act with their eyes and do all sorts of acting that on screen in a talking picture began to look ridiculous. Particularly John Gilbert had a voice like that. I don't know what, I think it was Gloria Swanson or no, it was Greta Garbo. That was her boyfriend. And what she could see with a voice like that. But he was a very handsome guy. Singing in the Rain makes fun of that, where the actress goes, I can't stand it, and they dub her voice. And that, in a technical sense, was a huge, obvious, huge breakthrough. So was Technicolor. Some actors didn't look as good in color. And as things got better and better, actors used to say, this is my good side, that's my bad side. Today, that's considered nonsense because the cameras of today pick up everything. For me, I think my favorite sword and sandal epic, for a lot of reasons, is Spartacus. Kirk Douglas was so honed in on his vision of the movie, he was producing it and starring in it, that he fired the original director, Anthony Mann, and hired Stanley Kubrick, the biggest film early in Kubrick's career, to finish the movie. And ironically, at least to my eyes, the first part of the movie in the salt mines in Libya somewhere were directed by Anthony Mann. He left them in there. I don't know what Anthony Mann did to get himself fired, but it's almost Kubrick-like vision for the rest of the film. A director almost never gets fired after footage is used, and the footage is never, in my memory, never kept for the final cut, but it happened in Spartacus. So I think for a lot of different levels, Spartacus was the great sword and sandal epic that created movies like, even though Ben-Hur was another one, came right before Spartacus, those kind of movies were the ones that got people back to the theaters. When Cinerama came, and VistaVision, and Todd A.O., and those things were all coming on 3D in Cinerama in the 1950s, it was all because of the advent of television. They needed to smell-o-vision, all sorts of gimmicks, some of them silly, that were devised by the movie theaters to get you back into the theaters and away from the TVs. And today it's happening again. A lot of movies today are 3D movies with no apparent reason for making them 3D. I think it may detract some kind of films, but because people are at home with flat screen TVs and Amazon and Netflix and video games, and that's a threat to the movie industry. I think that movies have to advance and have advanced technologically to keep up and give you things that you can't get on TV, at least until the advent of high definition and now these smart TVs and flat screen TVs and Blu-ray. It's just about as good at home, but it's 6 months later too. Movies, I think, are made to be seen when they're released and have a sudden impact then. Some movies are dated a year later. Now, the window between the release in the theater and the release on TV is ever smaller than it used to be. It's now a month or two, or 3 months. And so that's changing too. I think it's a continual challenge to the movies. Also, there's one thing that watching on TV can't replicate that you get from the movies, a sense of community. If you see a horror movie, I saw The Exorcist in a theater, there's no escape. You're in your seat. You can't get up and turn away. You can't fast forward. You can't put it on pause. And also a sense of adventure that you have in a theater. And I love it when audiences applaud in a movie theater. It means they're having a good time, but none of the filmmakers can hear them. But it means that you're a sense of community. So you can't replicate that at home, no matter how good your TV is.
This is pretty good. Sorry about that.
I like that.
I hate being interviewed.
Do you?
Yeah, I'm not good at interview.
I bet you're good.
I'll try.
All right. Producer, actor, director, which one do you like best right now?
Director. I like directing. For me, and again, I think it's important to just put the caveat that every director has a different process. So when I say it's this, I mean this is how I do it. There's many ways for a director to interface with the crew, and many different ways for a director to interface with the more technical aspects of a crew, whether it's an ILM or some small independent visual effects house in some kid's garage in India. There's many different styles. So I'm not the kind of director who goes up there and monitors them and wants to know exactly what software they're using and what designers are doing what. I'll, now through PIX and other systems, file sharing, I can be anywhere and they can send me, you know, it might take 15 different steps between, you know, stick figures moving around and a reasonably finished product, and they're sending me these and I'm giving them notes and again, letting them do what they do. I find that, you know, these companies are so good now, they can literally do, they can do anything. So as a filmmaker, you know, it's your job to kind of come up with the idea and, you know, make sure it fits into a budget, and then just generally sit back and let these super talented designers do their job. When I'm approaching an effects sequence, big sequence, whatever that is, if it's a ship exploding, if it's you know, Will Smith in Hancock, you know, putting his foot through a moving car and bearing his feet into the road and stopping the vehicle, whatever it is, if it's a crowd enhancement for a football scene in Friday Night Lights, I like to have some kind of image in my mind. I think it's important that as a director, you don't come to, you know, VFX guys and say, hey, what do we do? You say, look, I want this. I want this car to hit this and spin 14 times and smash through a building, and I want a wide shot of that car exploding out of the building and taking out a, I don't know, a jumbotron of a football stadium, right, or whatever it is. You've got this, and you should be able to see it in your head and have some idea going into it. But then you can sit down with these guys and go, okay, this is kind of what I'm thinking. And they'll put it on a computer and they'll animate it. And then once we have it animated, then we can really start talking about, well, what if the camera spun around the car as it was coming out and then traveled with it? And what if the car went through a flock of birds and they all had, you know, whatever the imagination can think of, you can previs. Then once you start honing in on a previs and you start bringing your effects designers, if it's ILM, who I work with a lot, you bring guys like Grady Coffer down and they look at the previs and they're like, oh, well, we could also do this, 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 and this. And pretty soon you've designed and got this animated shot. And it's amazing. You can put music to it, you can cut it, you can tweak it. And then the tricky part, you fall in love with it, and then you turn it over to the effects house and they budget it. And that's when things kind of go sideways, because that's when all the, they come back and they say, oh yeah, sure, you can do it. That's, you know, $18 million. And you're like, well, maybe we're not going to go through the birds. How about, you know, well, that would save you, you know. And you then kind of ballpark it, get it into a number that fits, because you have to be somewhat financially responsible. Then once you've got it and it's budgeted and you like the way it looks, for me as a director, I can hand it over to a company like ILM, and they'll take it up to San Francisco. And as I say, I always joke and I say, look, you know, I've made a conscious decision to not be all that intelligent and to have a career that doesn't demand for me to be that intelligent. Don't fuck with my decision. Don't come at me with your technical talk and your compression ratios and whatever bullshit technology you're using today. I don't really care. Just deliver this. One of the many challenges of our business is there's no barrier of entry, right? Anybody, literally anybody. I mean, if you call a plumber to come fix your house, you assume that the guy's got a license, right? You get on an airplane with your family, you take a quick look in the cockpit, you know those pilots that are certified and licensed, and obviously if you're going to go to the doctor, you expect them to be a degree in medical school at minimum, graduate school. Well, anybody can move to Hollywood and proclaim themselves a writer, director, an actor, producer, and there's no test, there's no entry point. So as a result, we get flooded, and you know, with social media and the ability for people to edit, you know, in different ways and make their own films, and obviously the way the equipment is becoming so much more simple and smaller. It's even making it easier for people to sort of become self-proclaimed, you know, filmmakers of whatever capacity. So as a result, you know, the amount of filmmakers keeps going up, but the amount of money and people that are willing to give is not going up. So you get all these people fighting, and the system has a very odd way, I think, of kind of figuring out who's actually a credible steward of the money, who can consistently get it done and create a return on that investment. And so those lines aren't as clear. It's not like, well, I'm going to go to film school, I'm going to get up early, I'm going to exercise, I'm going to drink a lot of water, I'm not going to swear or cuss or, you know, do any drugs or be reckless. I'm going to be a good person and I'm going to be rewarded for it. It just doesn't go that way out here. The lines are much harder to delineate. I like a great story, you know, and I've rarely seen technology trump storytelling. You know, it can be very additive. There can be an extra element to it, but you know, there's very few filmmakers that I think are really using technology in such a unique, transcending manner that I really go, wow, okay, like, you know, what James Cameron does, I get it. I see that, not my thing. I could never do that, but, you know, I tip my hat to that vision and passion and utilization of technology. There's very few filmmakers that can do it. And, you know, there's been a lot of 3D films that really just aren't that good. And how many filmmakers are consistently working with new technology in a way that you really go, holy shit, I've never seen that before. I put Michael Bay in that category, someone who really understands technology and is obsessed with it. And what he does in Transformers and the shot making that he does and the marriage of, you know, of visual effects and live action is very, very unique. But that, and James Cameron, those directors love it. It's not like you can just pick any director and give him Transformers and say, oh, do what Michael Bay did, or any director and give him Avatar. So you can't just say, oh, I'm going to do a 3D romantic comedy. It's got to be a director that really understands and is obsessed with the technology if it's going to really work.